My sister's a therapist and I tell jokes. We both want to help all kinds of folks.
Hello and welcome to My Sister's a Therapist. My name's Virginia Jones. I'm a stand-up comedian and my sister's a therapist.
Hi, I'm Laura Ryan. I'm Virginia's sister and I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist.
So if you've never listened to our show before, welcome. This is a show where a comedian and a therapist talk about the issues of the day, sometimes therapy related, sometimes just society related. We've been doing a lot of man bashing lately. So this week I thought we'd do something. So hello to our returning listeners. Hello, Mom. There is a phenomenon called the Baader-Meinhof.
Okay.
And that's the thing where you learn about something and then immediately after you learn about it, you see it everywhere.
When something enters your awareness and then you can't help but see it.
It's also known as frequency illusion. So It's named after a German terrorist group in the 70s. Guess what they were called? They were called the Baader-Meinhof group.
That was tough to figure out.
But it's like, it does sound like a psychologist, like it sounds like a doctory thing.
It sounds like two doctors' last names. One of them was German. Actually, both of them were German, Baader-Meinhof.
100% of them were. So like a guy in Minnesota learned about this group. Like in the next couple of weeks, he just saw it everywhere. And so that's kind of where the concept, like this apparently originated in a letter to the editor. He was like, once I learned about Baader-Meinhof from your newspaper, then I was seeing allusions to them everywhere and I'd never ever seen it. I'd never heard of them.
Do you know why that happens?
Why does that happen?
Okay, the reason that happens is that every day you are walking around living your best life and you are receiving all of these inputs, but our brain actually doesn't have the capacity to process all of the information that's coming at it all day long. So it filters the things we understand, the things we know, and the things we believe, right? That's why, like, have you seen the stage? He's like a hypnotist and comedian sort of person. His name is Darren Brown. So he does a thing that proves your point, which is he's doing this very complicated trick. So I guess he's kind of a magician also. So he's doing this very complicated, very involved trick where everyone is having to like really focus on what he's doing. And while he does that, a man in a gorilla costume runs across the stage, runs into the audience, runs back.
Wow.
And literally no one notices.
He's invisible. Wow.
Right.
Yeah. So I find like there's an overlap here. Well, to your point about we only really can see or take in what we already understand.
And also what we're paying attention to.
And all we're paying attention to. And that's like that's the basis of magic. Like, but yeah, I put quotes around, comedian because every comedian is annoyed at magician/hypnotists taking their weekends in Des Moines.
Darren is probably more in Surrey or something because he is an English person.
He's a British. Okay. But I read a thing a couple years ago. I still think about it. It said it was on the topic of our brains are not built to handle the information we have coming at them now. That like someone in the Middle Ages, if you took the Sunday edition of the New York Times, the information in that newspaper would be more than someone in the Middle Ages would take in their whole lifetime.
Exactly.
And so, and like we definitely talk about like depression and anxiety and stuff caused by us just taking in more information than our brains can really handle.
Right. And not knowing what to do with said information.
Yeah. And not knowing where to put it. Okay. So that's interesting. But the thing I wanted to talk about is the Baader-Meinhof as it pertains to pop psychology.
Right.
Because there's a thing where we've already talked about codependency in one of our earlier episodes. And like in the 80s, codependency was broached as a new topic and regular people were like, well, what does it mean? And then they would explain it to each other. And then it became every relationship.
Right.
Everyone was accused of being a codep, accused of grooming a codep, accused like it applied, like you just spread the information across everybody like a big butter knife.
Right.
And I think that happens.
It became a catch-all.
And I think that happens a lot today and kind of spurred on by TikTok and sometimes therapists on TikTok, although I don't think it's a therapist's fault.
Instagram.
But
I blame Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah. So codependence was the first time I remember thinking about this, like, oh, it's strange. I never heard of this. And now it's everywhere. Right. Now it's being applied to every single situation. The second thing was people on the autism spectrum.
Yeah.
Like, I remember meeting the first person who had been diagnosed and knew what was going on. And he explained it to me. And I thought it was this, and this was like 2002, probably. Yeah. And I thought it was super wild and super rare.
Right.
Because I had never, ever heard of it.
Yeah.
And so what do you think about
You'd seen the movie Rain Man, and that's all we had.
Fast forward 20 years, feels like every kid is on the autism spectrum and also has a peanut allergy.
Yes. Well, the peanut allergy is real, and it actually has gotten significantly worse. And a lot of people are saying it's due to the environments in which we live. Like,
we don't have enough peanuts?
No, we have developed, our allergies have become worse because of all the chemicals and garbage in our water and everything else. So it's a human problem.
All right.
So yeah, peanut allergies are significantly worse, and the rate of diagnosis of ADHD and autism.
Yes. So I think that that's also a part. I think that when a new term or diagnosis is reached, the first thing that happens is that many people are diagnosed who have never been diagnosed before.
Right.
Who've just been walking around unable to manage their symptoms.
Right.
But I think the second wave is self-diagnosis.
Right.
And people diagnosing their friends. And like, you think like, oh, what's the harm if you think you have a little of this, a little of that? Ultimately, I think it's bad because when you overuse a word, it becomes meaningless. It becomes less. It hurts the people who actually have the thing.
Right. When it becomes oversaturated, it waters down everything, and everyone starts to think it's a joke or it's silly or it's not real. Right. Like, you're probably going to mention this, but the term gaslighting.
Right.
Gaslighting is a real thing. It's based, a therapist came up with the term after watching the movie Gaslight, where the story of the movie is that this man is probably a narcissist. He's definitely a sociopath. He's trying to convince his wife that the house is being haunted because ultimately she's going crazy. And so the goal ultimately for him is to convince her that she's crazy, have her put away somewhere, and then use all of her riches and whatnot. And so the term, actually, the phrase, and a lot of people don't know this, it comes from, there's a staircase in the movie that goes into the basement, and there are gas lit lights. And every time she enters, that gets on or off the staircase, he's turning the lights up and down and trying to convince her. And then when she comes upstairs, he says, "Oh, what are you talking about? No, everything's
nothing
normal for me." Yeah. So he's basically telling her lived reality is not real, which is what gaslighting means. But now it's come to mean you don't agree with me.
Right. You don't agree with me. You moved the Oreos. You said we were going to McDonald's and now we're at Wendy's. It's all gaslighting.
Right.
And so that makes the actual abuse, it desensitizes us.
Right. And then, when you are actually being abused, it doesn't seem like such a big deal because gaslighting is everything. And, and I think it also makes it harder to diagnose when you are in an abusive relationship because you're going, well, Katie on TikTok, used gaslighting to talk about her coworkers stealing her pencils, and in the meantime, my husband is actively cheating on me with other women and pretending that I'm crazy.
Yeah. Right.
When I notice, hey, you have lipstick on your shirt, sir, and you come home every night and take a shower as soon as you walk in the door. That's when we know we're being gaslit, just to clarify that for everybody.
Well, and like gaslighting wasn't the only thing the dude in the movie does. He's moving her necklaces.
Right.
So she thinks she's put them away or like she's lost them or something. It could be called necklace moving, but we didn't glom onto that.
It doesn't hit the same necklace moving. Necklace moving could be a woman who works at Target and is trying to do her job. Okay.
Yeah. So I think a big one is triggered.
Yes.
Because triggered is a real thing. Like there are people living with trauma.
What do you think triggered means?
I think it's someone who has PTSD, who has a trauma event, and when they see something that other people would not consider to be a big deal, it can really put them back in that place. So like, for example, if I had a near drowning experience,
right,
and while I was drowning, I saw a unicorn floaty.
Right.
And every time I see a unicorn or a floaty or something of the same color, it flips me out.
Right.
And it doesn't mean you're not triggered by the Backstreet Boys. It's just, you just don't like them. And like,
well, you can be. Okay. How about that?
Be.
I was assaulted during a Backstreet Boys concert. So when I hear, yeah, I break out into a sweat and I have heart palpitations.
Thank you very much. So, but yeah, now I think that especially right-wing comedians, people who are very worried about cancel culture,
right?
They will use triggered to say like, you're getting upset about something very small.
So you're right. It's a way to demean and undermine a person, right?
Yeah.
And I think also a lot of, bless them, Gen Z kids say, they overuse the word triggered. So I'm triggered because you're eating cereal that I think is gross.
Right.
That's not it. Triggered means, again, let's just clarify. Triggered means when I am exposed to the thing, whatever the thing is, my heart rate accelerates. I start panicking. I can't breathe. I become totally emotionally dysregulated. And it's very unclear why it's happening. And it feels really overblown compared to the stimulus. So like I had a client in the past who was afraid of balloons because of something that had happened. And there's a lot of activities in life that you'd be surprised to have balloons in them. And so it was very tough.
Balloons are involved. I have a friend who cannot be near balloons, but it's because she has an inner ear thing. Popping champagne, balloons, fireworks, all extremely painful for her. Right. And so her husband is always kind of like when people come to their home or like people invite us places, if they can't be sure there's no balloons, they can't go.
Right.
And
New Year's Eve must be a real treat.
Well, yeah, exactly. Every New Year's Eve, they go out in the mountains. They go out to Idlewild. Because she can't, it's worse than a Labrador retriever. But someone I know asked the husband, so when is she going to do therapy for this, for this triggering event that she had? He was like, oh, no, it's physical. It's not in her brain.
It's not mental and emotional. It's not an actual physical problem. Also, if you have ASD, one of the features of ASD is that you sometimes have a high sensitivity to sound. So those people could also be quote unquote triggered by fireworks or balloons popping.
I know a young man who was recently diagnosed with ASD, and a bunch of us used to babysit him. And when I say a bunch of us, I mean women that I know. And it was very wild because we were on a walk together and he started putting his hands over his ears and wailing. And I panicked and I called his mom. I'm like, what is this? And she's like, oh, is there like their loud noise or like siren or something? I'm like, yeah. She was like, yeah, he does that. But he was not like, it was wild because this half dozen babysitters, we were all talking to each other about how we thought he was ASD.
Right.
But his parents found out like 45 minutes and it was like, you don't know where to look and you don't know what to say. Like I didn't know them well enough to say, hey, have you considered having him assessed? Yeah, but he has been assessed and he's getting the help he needs. That's all we wanted. But it was a surreal situation. It was strange. So, okay.
But yes, that is different from triggering.
Right. So another thing that has gotten really overused, I think, is narcissism. So I wanted to ask you, because like everyone on TikTok, there's a guy, he's been bad, he's selfish.
Right.
But there's difference between having narc tendencies, which is maybe you're a little self-centered, and this has been me, as you know.
Right.
You're a little self-centered. It's hard for you to pay attention to other people's shit.
Right.
And narcissistic personality disorder, which is you are abusing people as part of your lifestyle.
It's not a lifestyle choice. We'll start there.
Right.
So narcissism is a personality style. That's kind of the way that we describe it. And so the way that you know if a person has narcissism, because some of these guys might have narcissistic personality disorder, but basically here are some of the features. A grandiose sense of self-importance, a preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love, a belief that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high status people or institutions, a need for excessive admiration, a sense of entitlement, interpersonally exploitative behaviors, a lack of empathy, envy of others or belief that others are envious of them, and a demonstration of arrogant or haughty behaviors and attitudes. So you have to meet 5 of those criteria. 5. Count them 5. So you have to be doing 5 of those things. So if you're doing 2 of those things, you cannot be diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. And also, you can't be diagnosed with personality disorder by your girlfriend.
Right. By your girlfriend's best friend. Right. You can't be diagnosed by a Cosmo quiz.
Yeah, exactly. You can't be diagnosed by a commenter on your TikTok.
Right.
Unless that commenter is a therapist who's met you in person as well.
Right. Who's worked with you.
I think it does get thrown around. And when we do that, we hurt people. If narcissist becomes this kind of catch-all stupid word, when a woman or man is in a relationship with someone with this disorder, they're going to feel even more undermined. They're going to feel even less able to really look into it and find out more. But also, I'm just going to throw this out there. I'm constantly referring to this book. If you feel like your partner has a personality disorder, a great book is Stop Caretaking the Borderline or Narcissist by Margalis Fjelstad. And it's really helpful in figuring out, I can't make people be different, but I can change my personal behavior around said people.
So I want to take 2 things on that. One, it is hard to tell the difference between someone who is just a little bit narky and someone who has a personality disorder, because in this land of like selfie taking and TikToking and like making all this content just about self,
right?
Everybody's a little narky. Like
everybody is self-absorbed. And being self-absorbed, while it is annoying,
it's not abusive.
It's not abusive to others, and it's not a diagnosis. You can probably stop being self-absorbed. The likelihood of you stop being this personality style, because it's really complicated. The reason that people become narcissists is because they were raised in environments that were not safe, and they were trying to figure out a way to protect themselves. So if I'm self-absorbed, I can go to therapy and probably work on that. But if I have narcissistic personality disorder, the diagnosis is worse.
And like the Greek origin, of course, there's this beautiful youth Narcissus.
Right.
Some nymph was hitting on him.
Right.
And he did not give a shit. He just wanted to look at himself in the water until he starved.
Yeah.
And so he became a flower.
Which unfortunately, in real life, people with NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, do not become flowers.
They don't become flowers. Another thing that I think gets overused, OCD. Having obsessive compulsive disorder does not mean you need your kitchen clean, right? Like it's harmful. It can be injurious. It can be repetition. It can keep you from doing stuff. But also, let's see. I wanted to talk about...
Let me tell you some of the features of OCD.
Okay, yeah, let's talk.
Okay, so this is how we know. Again, got to have 5 to meet criteria.
Okay.
Recurrent and persistent thoughts, urges, or impulses that are experienced at some time during the disturbance as intrusive and unwanted, and that in most individuals cause marked anxiety or distress. The individual attempts to ignore or suppress such thoughts, urges, images, or to neutralize them with some other thought or action, i.e. performing a compulsion. Repetitive behaviors like hand washing, ordering, checking, or mental acts like praying, counting, repeating words silently that the individual feels driven to perform in response to an obsession according to the rules that must be applied. And the behaviors or mental acts are aimed at preventing or reducing anxiety or distress or preventing some dreaded event or situation. Mm-hmm. However, these behaviors or mental acts are not connected in a realistic way with what they are designed to neutralize or prevent, or they are clearly excessive. So here's an example, the hand washing example. So hand washing is a way to, well, it has to do with a phobia about cleanliness, right? It's about germs and it's about a sense that I'm going to be infected. So it's kind of an infection obsession. And so I wash my hands to try to create some sense of control that I'm not going to be infected. Like Jason, I was listening to Jason Bateman this morning on his podcast, and he was talking about
our podcast pretty much only exists to promote his podcast.
That's the only reason why I'm alive at this point.
Smartless, right. Okay.
It's smartless. Anyway, 3 awesome dudes. Anyway, so, but he was talking about, Will Arnett was making fun of him because he's like, oh, have you been to dinner with Jason? So, and then Jason describes his rituals. When you go to dinner, you go in, you sit down, you order from the menu, then you push the menu away, run to the bathroom, and basically medically wash your hands up to the elbows for the correct amount of time. You kick the door open, you kick your chair out of the way because you can't touch the chair again, and you don't touch a menu because you never
touch anything again.
You don't want to infect your food. So that in a nutshell is OCD.
Right. And just why not get off the path from this? I think that many people who had tendencies like in the early days of leaving the house after COVID, it got bananas. Like many people who may not have the full disorder, but had one or two compulsions, things would happen that just didn't make any sense. Like you would see someone who was wearing rubber gloves to touch everything, but then she would drink out of my latte. I'm like, what is
it? Doesn't, yeah, because it's not actually it's not making you safe. But there's other kinds of OCD. Like I saw, this was a really interesting one because I've sometimes had this recurrent thought, but it hasn't overwhelmed me. This guy was overwhelmed with the thought that he was going to stab his girlfriend. And so he became obsessed and he was like looking at knives, and it was just like, he doesn't want to do it, but he has these intrusive thoughts that he's going to do it. And a lot of times, if you have bipolar, a lot of times the intrusive thoughts are going to be connected to that, which can create OCD behaviors.
Yeah. And Maria Bamford has talked about this extensively.
Yes.
Her experience, she has intrusive thoughts, but then she would have like OCD things like, if I tap this thing 15 times, I won't murder my parents.
Right. Or I won't. I remember she said she had intrusive thoughts about hurting kids.
Yeah.
And if you're worried about hurting kids and you feel bad about it, then you're probably not going to do it. The people that we need to worry about, you think about hurting kids and you feel good about it. And you think, you know what? That feels like a good way to spend a Saturday.
The other thing I was going to talk about on OCD and intrusive thoughts, well, like, I think everybody has some intrusive thoughts. Like everybody has had the experience of like, you're walking over a bridge and you think, what if I jumped in? And you're like, where did that thought come from?
Right.
Like, for me, the experience of being in Singapore, which has very strict rules about spitting, chewing gum, and obviously graffiti, like being in Singapore, you start thinking, what if
I'm going to be caned if...
Yes. What if I just freak out and spit on the ground and then I'm caned? Yeah. So like, I think everybody has had that happen, but there's a point at which your life becomes unmanageable. Because
you're trying to do all of these behaviors to try to prevent said outcome, right? So for example, let's use your Singapore idea. So if I am in Singapore and I'm afraid of being caned for spitting, then I'm going to spend all day probably compulsively swallowing spit and trying to keep my mouth dry. And I'm going to maybe put like 14 of those like breath pat things to try dry my mouth and make sure that, so when it starts, I guess, when you have OCD, when it starts to kind of prevent you from living a normal life, that's when we know it's kind of gone too far. But yes, lining up my pencils or liking a clean kitchen, that is not OCD.
Okay. Next one, ADHD. And there are many ADHD adults, there are many ADHD children, but it's not just having a short attention span.
Right. ADHD doesn't mean you're kind of lackadaisical or, you forgot a detail.
Right. Everyone forgets a detail. It does not mean you have, but like, so specifically on TikTok, everyone on TikTok feels like self-diagnoses as neurodivergent because if you watch one video about autism spectrum disorder or ADHD or OCD, TikTok says, well, that's what she wants to watch. And then it will just shove all these videos at you. And then the kids are like, oh, well, they have this almost religious belief in the algorithm. They're like, well, if the algorithm is giving this stuff to me, it must mean that I am neurodivergent.
And if I get really obsessed with that, I might have OCD.
Right.
So here's some criteria.
Okay.
So ADHD is really, truly a different way. There's a lot of different kinds of ADHD. So there's the inattentive type, there's the hyper type. So there's all these subcategories. I'm just trying to find some general. So some of the ways that you will know that you have ADHD: often fails to pay attention to details or makes careless mistakes. Check. Has a diminished attention span or has difficulty sustaining attention to tasks or activities, check. I'm just diagnosing myself right now.
Right.
Has poor listening skills and does not seem to listen when spoken to directly. Often does not follow through on instructions and fails to finish schoolwork, chores, or duties. So has difficulty organizing tasks and activities, avoids, dislikes, or is reluctant to engage in tasks that require sustained mental effort or concentration, loses things that are necessary for tasks or activities. That is like probably my last name, is often easily distracted or sidetracked by extraneous stimuli, including unrelated thoughts, and often forgets daily activities. So I think all of us can do some of these things some of the time.
Right.
But if I'm doing all of those things all of the time, like I remember years ago, I had a friend who had been diagnosed with ADHD and we were talking and I said, I was getting in her car. She's like, I'm so sorry. My car is so dirty. And I said, that's funny. Every friend I have has a really dirty car. And she said, yeah, it's because every friend you have and you have ADHD. And I was like, no, I don't. Because I think, you think about the hyperactivity type. But yeah, I think you have to meet all those criteria. And also, I think another pro tip is if you take an ADHD medication and feel chill, then you probably have ADHD.
You might have ADHD.
You might have ADHD, but yes, you need to go to a provider and get diagnosed and do the things. But yeah, I think you're right. It has become a catch-all, which I think is, again, unfortunate because ADHD is really, really hard to live with. And it makes your life super complicated and really, really hard. Like a TikToker described her adult diagnosis of ADHD was, she said, it's like you were born driving a Ford Pinto and the people in your family know how to drive a Ford Pinto. And so they'll teach you, okay, well, you always have to have these tools in the trunk and you always can. And so you kind of putter along and then randos on the outside try to give you advice. And you're like, well, that doesn't work. And then you find out one day that, oh, these people have been driving, Teslas this whole time. And I'm trying to deal with this like 82 Pinto. The advice doesn't work. Right? Well, I can't be in a Tesla, but these Tesla drivers are telling me, well, just tweak the Pinto.
Just write it down. Just put it in your calendar.
Just write it down. Just, count to 5. I mean, yes, I think the way that you have ADHD, I think if you meet me and I like you, but it's
interesting.
If you're my client in private practice, you also have ADHD because I think those folks, they find me. Well, they meet with me first and then they're like, oh my gosh, this woman is keeping up with me and she's at my pace. Like I remember once I had this man who had such severe ADHD that he was an artist. He was very creative, but he was living in total chaos. And so what I discovered when I was talking to him is it's like, we're standing here and we're both looking at this beautiful apple tree, right? And he pulls an apple down and he holds it up and he starts telling me about it. And then he sees an even more beautiful apple. And so the whole time we're never completing. Like, I think that's a good indicator. If the trains don't get to the station, if they're just sitting on the rail, then chances are very good.
Looking at apples.
That you have ADHD, or you might be on the autism spectrum because ADHD and autism are kind of we're on the same line.
That's a big complicated thing. I want to talk about the word.
Your brain is different, neurodivergent.
Yeah. I want to talk about the word sociopath because we apply this to celebrities, former presidents, and to my understanding, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, sociopath is not just a person with low empathy.
Right.
Like a sociopath probably couldn't be president because they would always be in jail or on drugs. Because they are so pleasure seeking and they have no problem setting other things aside for that. Like it's so much bigger than we think of it.
I think that being kind of a jerk, it's the same as like when people call someone a narcissist. Being kind of a jerk and not thinking too much about other people, being rude, that's not being a sociopath. So a sociopath, pervasive pattern of disregard for and violation of the rights of others, starting at around 15 years old, indicated by 3 or more. So you got to have 3 or more for sociopathy. It's not called sociopathy anymore. It's called antisocial personality. There's a pervasive pattern of disregard for and violation of the rights of others, Failure to conform to social norms with respect to lawful behaviors, as indicated by repeatedly performing acts that are grounds for arrest. Deceitfulness, repeated lying, use of aliases, or conning others for personal profit or pleasure. Impulsivity or failure to plan ahead. Irritability and aggressiveness, as indicated by repeated physical fights or assaults. That's a good one. Reckless disregard for the safety of self and others, consistent irresponsibility indicated by repeated failure to sustain consistent work behavior or honor your financial obligations. Lack of remorse. I think that's the big ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
When you notice that someone has a lack of remorse indicated by being indifferent to or rationalizing having hurt, mistreated, or stolen from other people.
Yeah. So your ex-boyfriend is not a sociopath. He's just an asshole.
Right. He's a self-absorbed, immature nitwit who's living high on the patriarchy.
Right. But yeah, again, like there's nothing inherently wrong there's nothing more pleasurable I find in the modern world than like reading a self-help book and having it really click in like, oh,
Right.
This explains everything. There's a real pleasure in getting a new word, getting a new diagnosis and saying, oh, this is what everything is about.
I encourage people in general to learn more. Just because I saw a 30-second TikTok about this, it's not enough information to, for example, diagnose someone with sociopathy, right? That is the problem as I see it. Because I remember, for example, when I read Codependent No More for the first time, my whole brain exploded because I thought, this is how I've been living my entire life. So what did I do? I did more research and found out more.
And one thing I've seen therapists complain about on TikTok is they're like very well-meaning people with huge following will make these A to B to C associations. They're like, well, I have ADHD and I also can't stand salt. If you don't like salt, you probably have ADHD. Like that doesn't follow like that. But like these kind of like erroneous idea can become very popular very quickly.
If you're constantly walking into rooms, not remembering why you're there, and if every time you leave a room, all the drawers and cabinets are open, you might have ADHD.
The walking into a room thing, I think that's part of caveman brain. Like moving from one area to another area, you kind of reset a little bit.
Right. And that's why people who have ADHD really struggle because the train has not gone to the station. It is sitting on the track. So I'm standing in my bedroom thinking about something. It was a bedroom thought. Then I go in the kitchen to do I did this morning. Went to the kitchen to do said thing. And the thought is gone because the train did not go to the station, which is why I take medication for my ADHD.
The last kind of thing I wanted to touch on that I think is actually kind of dangerous in this realm is like, I will always be thankful to our former president, Donald J. Trump, for bringing us the Me Too movement.
Yeah.
Because as much confusion as it has engendered, it has also created a whole new environment of awareness.
Right.
And I don't know what we would have had to do to get there otherwise.
Right.
But this also applies to sexual abuse. You know, I've been in like secret groups where comedians will tell each other, well, this guy is bad news. This guy is bad news. This guy asked me for nudes in order to get a booking. But it gets very quickly degenerates into bad boyfriends and cheaters with sexual predators.
Right.
I think it's just a human tendency. And again, that makes sexual abuse meaningless. Or if you are calling every cheater or everyone who misrepresented themselves to have, consensual sex with you a sexual predator, well, then none of it applies.
I think when we start doing that, when we overdo it, it just minimizes and diminishes everything else. So yes, the Me Too movement was started by Tarana Burke in 2006. It got wind in its sails.
Right.
When Trump was allegedly he was
fondling and raping
children and adults.
Right. Right. Another interesting thing about people becoming absorbed in pop psychology is that words become meaningless, like insane and crazy. No one uses that in a clinical.
It's not a kind word when you say insane and crazy. It's not a clinical term. We don't say this person is clinically insane, even though originally it was a diagnosis. But I think as we've become more nuanced in the mental health field, it has gotten better. But also, I think it's been overused. And so now it is meaningless. It's now just an insult. like MR, mentally retarded, used to mean, somebody who has delayed, responses and is sort of behind the general culture. And then it became an insult. And so now it has no meaning. So you can't use that to diagnose someone anymore. And I think when we do this, I guess my final thought is like, when we do this, it ruins it for everyone else. And like, I was excited when people started talking about gaslighting more openly, because obviously I've known that term for years and years, and now it's become a part of popular culture. But when you hear people misusing it, it muddies the waters. It makes things more confusing. And I know everyone has good intentions, but it does really suck because people who are experiencing said thing are being ignored and, kind of, it's like,
oh, it happens to everybody.
Right. It's like, oh, well, this thing I'm experiencing is just a normal part of being a person. No, it's not. Being gaslit only happens when you're talking to a person who is trying to mentally manipulate you. So that person is either a narcissist or a domestic abuser or a sociopath. The lady at the grocery store, she might be those things, or she might just be a dick.
Right. She might be a dick. She might be having a bad day. She might have run out of
Maybe she doesn't want to she doesn't want to reach up on that shelf and get those buns. So she's telling you they don't have any. Yes. What are your final thoughts?
My final thoughts are, I guess, echoing what you said, like, as much as it's exciting to learn about a new thing and to see it everywhere, you have to keep in mind that you can't diagnose people.
Right.
That seeing a TikTok is not a diagnosis.
Right.
And that the more you use a word, it becomes, I guess the term is fuzzy term. Like it becomes fuzzy.
It becomes meaningless.
It becomes more and more unclear. So you were not love bombed by a toxic gaslighter. You just had a short relationship with a man, with a jerk. Yeah, it's fine. And it happens.
It's not fine.
But that will literally happen to all of us.
And if you date men, absolutely that will happen.
I've been told with reasonable confidence that this happens to all kinds of people with all kinds of sexual orientation. So, Laura, as we wrap up, where can people find you online?
They can find me at my website, lauraryan.org, or they can find me on my TikTok account, which is I am Laura Ryan. Virginia, where can people find you on the interwebs?
Thank you so much for asking. My website is badinia.com, BADINIA. That is also my TikTok. That is also my Instagram. You can find shows that I'm doing, places I'm going. On my TikTok, you can find dogs that I own, lots of important stuff. We want to say thank you so much for listening. And if you like My Sister's a Therapist, please tell a friend, subscribe.
Go to our website, mysisterstherapist.com.
mysisterstherapist.com. You can write us at hello@mysisterstherapist.com. Ask us questions. Give us
future
feedback.
Episodes. Yeah.
Positive feedback is preferred, but
we'll take whatever we can get, really.
We'll take what we can get. Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
Bye.